Hello, and welcome to another episode of Let's Argue About Plants, the podcast for people who love plants.
Just not always the same ones.
I'm Steve Aiken, the editor of Fine Gardening Magazine.
And I'm Danielle Sherry. I'm the senior editor of Fine Gardening Magazine. And I am broadcasting live from my pillow fort at my house. And Steve, you are at your house. We are...
Yes, in the most secluded location that I have. So.
And we are in this time of social distancing. We are making this podcast still happen somehow, some way. So I'm flummoxed right now. I don't even know what's our topic. What the heck's going on? What day is it? Am I wearing pajamas?
You probably should have known that before we started. Like maybe we could clear that up next time. I prepared recommendations on colorful plants for shade.
See, you're all confused too. We don't know what the heck's going on.
I was going to say plants that pop in the shade, shine in the shade, but it's colorful options for shady settings.
Yes, color in the shade, color from the foliage, color from flowers. And I think that that's a big misconception is that you can't get color in the shade. It's all different various shades of green, but not true. Correct?
Yeah, it's a lot of that, but it's not only that.
It's not only that. Exactly. All right. Well, I found it really actually easy to come up with a list for this. And then I had to cut myself off at a certain time. So, I'm going to let you go first because I'm obviously still trying to get my feet underneath me in my pillow fort of a recording studio here.
Okay. Well, the first plant that came to mind when we talked about color in the shade was Brilliance Autumn Fern, which is Dryopteris erythrosora.
We'll blame it on the pandemic.
Dryopteris erythrosora. Zones 4 to 9. So zone 4 people can grow it too. And it's just a wonderful small fern. It's going to top out about 1.5 feet tall, 1.5 feet wide fern. And it has really dense, fronds. Like it's all like the pinnae or whatever they're called are very dense, but they emerge in a wonderful orange color, like not like a garish, ugly orange, but sort of like a shiny brown or an amber or something like that. And they just have such a wonderful color to them, and it slowly fades and it gets in tones of yellow and green. But every time I see this plant, it just looks good, no matter where you put it. And it's great. It's a great thing to do it balances like a lot of the brighter yellows that you can get, like say Japanese forest grass or some of the carex that grow in shade that can be like a really bright yellow. And this is a good way to bridge the gap back to green plants. It kind of sits right in the middle, and it's not too showy. It's a tolerable orange because I'm not a big orange fan, but
it's kind of a rust. Like I feel like it's like a kind of a bright rust.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make it sound very attractive, but it's really, really beautiful, and it's sizable, which is a lot of ferns are dainty, and you could step on them and they die, but this is a beefy fern.
Yeah, it's like a big frond. It's not an ostrich fern by any stretch, but it's big, and like I said, it has a dense. I don't know what the proper fern terminology is for this thing, but it has a every frond has presence to it,
Yeah. And did we say zones on that? Was I just not listening?
I said it, and no, you weren't listening. It's zones 4 to 9.
Okay, all right, cool.
Yeah, and it can go pretty much. I'm not sure how deep a shade. I think it can go full shade, like some moister soil more than a dry soil, which is true of pretty much every plant for shade. But just a wonderful plant. Every time I see it, it looks great. Yeah.
And I like that you're getting the color from the foliage and you're not depending on a flower. So with that being said,
Go ahead.
My first plant is going to be all about the flowers. I think about this. It's actually Iris cristata, which is dwarf crested iris. And I think about this plant every time we get towards Mother's Day, because when I first I guess became aware of this plant was I had gotten a 1-gallon pot of this for my mom for Mother's Day, probably 20 plus years ago. And it was just this adorable little iris I would call it a ground cover iris. It's something that only gets 6 to 8 inches tall and eventually colonizes and masses out to be about 1.5 feet or so wide. It's one of these plants that you can divide almost as soon as you purchase it. If it's a sizable plant in a 1 gallon, you just cleave it right in half. But the cool part is that it gets these adorable little light lavender, irisy foliage, flowers to it. And they have like a yellow stripe down the middle of each one of the, I guess, sections of the blossom. And this thing gets completely covered here in the Northeast mid-May. So I would say it's a mid-spring bloomer, and it just gets covered in these flowers. And it literally looks like a sea of purple when they bloom. And then it's just a really nice green ground cover, kind of looks like a small dwarf ornamental grass the rest of the year. Really, really nice plant. And again, full shade, also will tolerate a little bit of sun in the morning and does need some moisture. That's the only caveat. Definitely not a dry shade plant, but my mom liked it. She kept me around after I gave it to her. So I guess it was a winner.
Did the deer come along and eat it?
I'm not really sure. This is something that I haven't grown at my house. I've just, watched it kind of happening at my mom's house for years and years. So, I don't know. They don't have deer where she is. So, if a deer's hungry enough, it's going to eat anything, right?
Oh, that's how I am. Right. So I wasn't thinking flowers at all. I think all my plants are foliage plants, thus providing the superior color than to anything that has a flower. Hey, that's not me. I'm just pointing out the truth.
Oh, yeah.
These things will have color,
It's good to know that your superiority complex is not subsided in this time of social distancing.
I'm just stating facts. I mean, these plants, foliage plants will have color all throughout the season. Flowers will not.
Well, so I got a preview of your list, and I'm going to call you out on this later, and I'm hoping what plant are you going to talk about now? Because I know one of them is definitely almost all about the flowers.
Okay.
Jacob's ladder?
It's variegated.
Yeah, but it's the blue flowers of that plant. All right, do that plant, and then we can argue about it, because I'm ready.
Stairway to Heaven, Jacob's Ladder.
Okay.
Polemonium reptans, zones 3 to 8. I said the zones, Danielle, 3 to 8.
I paid attention.
And so it's a little it's a little mounding plant, maybe like 1 foot tall. It's going to get a little wider. It sort of has leaves that look like vinca or myrtle or whatever. But they're edged in white. Very showy in the shade. And then, around here, it's in May, it gets covered in these lavender flowers, and it looks really cool. You can spot this little plant from a ways away, because it's so showy. But then even when those little, bell-shaped flowers, which kind of makes me think of Easter. It's has the pastel-y Easter colors.
It's like blue. It's like a sky blue. They're beautiful.
Sky blue, light lavender. I don't know. You should create colors for J. Crew catalogs and stuff like that. It's not red. It's burnt cranberry.
That's right.
Yeah. So, even after the flowers go, this plant still looks good. It's still providing color in the shade. You need that hit of white amidst all sorts of the other fine textured green plants that you've got there. Super easy to grow. Again, likes a little moisture. Deer leave it alone. Mm-hmm. Native to pretty much the entire East Coast, eastern half of the country. So yeah, I don't think it's dependent on flowers at all for its showiness. But that's a definite bonus.
It is a definite bonus. I think I would grow that plant for the flowers. You would grow it for the foliage. But here's my thing with this plant. I have never had success with it coming back 3 years in a row. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's because it's so variegated that it struggles to really beef out. It's almost like Gora for me. It comes back the next year a little bit smaller. It comes back the third year, half the size of that. And then, by year 3, 4, it's gone. And it ticks me off because I love this plant so much, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong with it.
Well, this is the one you're growing. You're not growing any of the other variegated Polemonium.
No. Stairway to Heaven is supposed to be the superior one, because that was the knock against these variegated Jacob's ladders for a long time, is that they weren't all that reliable. So I've tried Stairway to Heaven, I think at least twice now, and it does not like me.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not sure we have enough time in this episode of the podcast to explore all the reasons you might have failed with this plant. I mean, there's just so much that we could dig into there. But you're the first person I've ever heard say that about.
Really?
So, yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, so here we go. So we're
okay. I've killed what's that, Golden Aurelia?
Sun King.
Two or three times. I've killed that 2 or 3 times, and you absolutely love it. So.
All right. So there we go. Thank you.
I'm to blame on that one, but
thank you for making me feel better. So I have a very similar plant. I'm obsessed with lungworts, pulmonaria. I love lungworts. I think they're beautiful. They all have, various different leaf shapes that are, kind of teardrop. Some are a little bit longer, the leaf shape. There's this new one that's called Twinkle Toes that admittedly I have not grown yet, but I am obsessed with it. I'm really excited about this one. I have other lungworts that are green. They have kind of spots that are silvery in color. And when this thing, Twinkle Toes, bursts into bloom, it's got purple little tubular flowers, pink little tubular flowers, blue little tubular flowers, and they kind of go through this mottled, fade through all the colors. Generally is a little bit later in spring. For here in the Northeast, it's usually around, I guess, late May, early June. And this claim to fame, because of the adorable name, Twinkle Toes, you would think it's got this bushy, compact habit. I saw this in a trial garden last summer, and I just became obsessed with it. It's just adorable, really, really cute. And it needs obviously some moist, well-drained soil, but I just think that this is going to be the perfect plant, 12 to 14 inches tall and wide, just this little, cute little bushy, tuffety thing. Zones 3 to 9 too, so a pretty wide zonal range.
All right, so clever listeners to this podcast will note that this is not the first plant named Twinkle Toes that you've recommended.
But the other one was a conifer, so maybe it's just the name.
Yeah, it must be the name. So anything with the name Twinkle Toes.
Yes.
I like pulmonarias too. I don't have the ones that I'm growing in a moist enough spot, so they survive. They don't really thrive. But for me, it's hard to tell the difference between them. There's one that's all green. There's one that's all silver, and then there's different levels of spots on the leaves. That to me, that's it for them. They're great. I have one that's surviving. It survived for years. Trevi Fountain is the.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's survived for years under utter neglect, and it's battling it out amongst grass and weeds and other things. But it's still there. It's still hanging in there. So tough plant. Deer don't eat it.
No, they do not, because it's kind of got this fuzzy, almost sandpapery texture to the leaves. I have a feeling that's why. It's got this little bit of hair going on.
I wish it bloomed a little longer.
Yeah.
I find that I miss them because I'm usually not around in spring. But yeah, great plant. But again, there's the one that's all silver, the one that's all green, and then the rest of them just have spots.
No, and then there's Twinkle Toes,
which has spots.
Yeah.
Spots. Yeah. That's all there is to say about it. So something else that has colorful foliage are Solomon seals. A plant that it's one of the first plants I ever became interested in. I had been, I started out with hostas, and like, oh wow, what else is there? And then we found this weird plant growing at the base of a really large old tree. But I looked it up, and it turned out to be Solomon seal, just the straight species. Very cool. Tried to propagate it by seeds because it has those blue things underneath it. But there's more that you need to do other than taking those blue berries and sticking them in the ground. I think the blue around it is you need to get rid of that. That inhibits germination or something like that. Anyway, a plant that's close to my heart, and they've been coming out with some really, really good variegated cultivars. Everybody knows the variegated Solomon seal, but there are some ones on the market that have even more variegation than that, and they're awesome. The one I want to talk about is White Tiger, or Byakko, Byakko, translates to White Tiger, and it's your regular Solomon seal, so it has this graceful arching branches and holds its leaves over it as though it's kind of like, sheltering anything growing underneath it. And the stems are reddish. The leaves come out green, but then they start to get these white splotches, like massive splotches close to the stem, and it grows out and out and out, almost entirely covering the leaf. And it makes just like this giant, mass of white in your shade. And it's really cool. It's really striking. I saw this in a garden in Minnesota when I was at Frank Fitzgerald, who you turned me on to. His garden is just amazing, and he had it. I took about 57 photos of it. And the thing about it is that the plant needs to mature for a few years until for it to get its full variegation. So you get a little variegation the first year, maybe a little bit more the second year. But just a very striking plant, and it's one of those things that every time someone walks by it, we'll ask what it is. Super easy to grow, like some moister soil, than dry. Gets maybe 2 feet tall and about that wide. A nice little clump. The deer will eat it. Deer have always eaten my Solomon seal. But in talking to other people, Andy Brand up at the Coastal Maine Botanic Garden is actually doing an article on colorful shade plants for an upcoming issue. And I asked him about this, and he said that Solomon seal isn't the first thing that deer go to, but don't plant it next to any hostas, So
that's their after dinner mint.
They won't order it off the menu, but if it's on the plate, they'll eat it, that kind of thing. But just a wonderful, gorgeous plant. You can't miss it. It's always going to make an impact, whether it's in flower or not. Great plant.
I grow the straight Variegata, and a couple of years ago, an awesome family friend was down at Plant Delight's nursery about 5 years ago or so and brought me back, I think it's Fireworks, which is more yellow striping to it. It has taken a very long time for me to get, 5 years for me last year to get 4 stems on that Fireworks. So slow grower, I guess. That's why I was so impressed with the photos that you took at Frank Fitzgerald's garden. This thing was sizable. Yeah. I mean, Byakko was big. It was one of those plants that was so variegated. I instantly thought, this is going to be one of those plants that struggles to actually beef out because you're going to get 3 stems for 15 years. But no, that was impressive. We'll put a picture of it actually up on the website. It looked like somebody had been walking by with a bucket of white paint. Yeah. and just spilled it. And there's this giant explosion of white paint on the top of this Solomon seal. Yeah, it was very impressive.
They're not splotches, they're blotches. They are like big.
No, yeah. Yeah, it was very impressive. Yeah. So that one definitely made my list, and I definitely want to try that plant because it's cool. Very cool.
You can get it at Far Reaches Farm.
Oh, I know them.
I saw them selling it, and I took a picture of it a few months before I went to Frank Fitzgerald's garden in Minnesota, and didn't realize they were the same plant. And then I was looking back over my pictures, and I realized they were the same thing. So I'm just awesome. Drawn to this plant. I must have it.
I must have it. So I have a foliage plant. I lied, but it gets flowers, but it's mostly the foliage to grow it for. And this is Trillium oostingii. Am I pronouncing? Oostingii, oostingii. Anywho, it's Watery River Trillium, Watery River, and watery is spelled Wateree, so not how you would think. And this is a native Trillium to the southeast, and it was discovered pretty recently, like I would say within the past 5 years or so, zones 6 to 9, 8 inches tall, 12 inches wide. And it has the typical Trillium leaves that are, kind of, palmate, kind of compound palmate, 5-fingered leaves. They're rather large. And then these are a bright green and then have these splotches of purple all over the leaves. And at first, when I saw it, I thought it was one of those really cool podophyllums, like Spotty Dotty or something like that. And I've always struggled to grow those, but I can grow Trillium. So I was excited about this guy. And then it puts out its flower, which is kind of this cup-like species tulip looking blossom, kind of a yellowish color, then chartreusey green, and then at the base it's this red color. So it's just a really, really interesting plant. It looks like it's, I don't know, from Africa. It's very exotic looking, but very, very cool. Really, really want to grow it. I spotted it online and thought, this is a cool plant. I really, really need to try this. And like most Trillium, it will actually tolerate a little bit of dryness. Now, we're not talking, hardcore dry shade, but Trillium's natural, habitat is around the base of trees. So it's willing to deal with a little bit of root competition and not the super moist conditions that a lot of shade plants need. So yeah, that was Watery River Trillium.
And what was the species name again?
Ustingii?
That sounds like a name somebody would make up. Just write down a bunch of random letters, and then that's you can't beat Trilliums. In the shade. Like I love seeing them in the woodland garden from far away. Again, they just attract the eye. And another plant that was one of the first plants that I knew because we found some growing wild at my parents' house. I had to be very careful not to, because it was near where I used to throw my lacrosse ball against the wall, and to make sure that I didn't miss and crush the Trillium with the lacrosse ball.
Right.
My mother was hoping that would give us some sort of protected status on our land, and our land would have to be protected, but
protected from lacrosse.
Yeah, but Trilliums are one of the plants that I definitely want to grow more of. I mean, they just always look good. They're kind of ephemeral though, don't they? Disappear like mid-season, like a podophyllum,
They do. They do. Yep. As soon as we get super dry in the summer, they do disappear. And then they just bounce back the next spring. And I kind of like that. It's something that you forget is there. It's great to have, in that early spring to mid-spring garden. And I'm just kind of in a spring state of mind. I guess that's why I picked a lot of spring plants today.
Well, I'd like to just pack it in the summer, and I wish all my plants would do the same. We're all calling a timeout till September. Okay. Yeah. Let them all come back. All right, guys. All right. See you in a few months. Kind of like what everybody's doing now.
Yeah.
I'm out on real life. Let's all go back to our houses, and we'll come out again in, maybe mid-May,
Exactly. I love it. Yeah.
All right. So the last plant I'm going to throw out there, Danielle, is probably something that when we're thinking about coloring the shade, we tend to maybe overlook. And that is a tree.
Ooh.
Not right on cue, but close.
Sorry.
And so, yes, the plant I really want to grow, the tree I really want to grow along the shady side of my yard, kind of an understory tree, is a dogwood. But not just any dogwood. This is a pagoda dogwood, but like the native version.
Oh, sorry. It wasn't my turn yet? Okay.
This is Cornus alternifolia, which is the native pagoda dogwood. It has a wonderful tiered structure to it, very airy, very light, very, very delicate, but still has some size to it. But I don't want the regular kind of that. No, I want the yellow variegated one. It's Golden Shadows is the name of it, and the cultivar name is W. Stackman, which I like better than Golden Shadows. It sounds odd, but this is a wonderful tiered. Branches to your dogwood. It has your regular dogwood leaves, but they have the yellow variegation in them, sort of like a yellow, not quite a swirl, but kind of like a curvy color of yellow to them. Absolutely gorgeous. Always looks good. Has enough size to it, but not an oppressive size. Very dainty. White flowers in the spring. Mm-hmm. This thing it just always looks good. It gets tinges of pink too in spring. Just a wonderful, wonderful tree, a great understory tree. It's very distinctive. It's just a wonderful thing to have in the understory. And I want 5 of them, but I probably can't.
5.
Yeah. I can't afford that. So I'm hoping just to secure one
There
and
you
make a
go.
go of it with that. But just a great plant, native to Southeast United States, I believe,
Hmm.
somewhere around here. So again, another great thing, but a way to liven up the edge of the woodland. I mean, where you're coming down from the shade, and before you get to a sunny spot, it's a perfect thing to grow there. That's Golden Shadows dogwood. Write it down. Yeah.
I think, I mean, if there ever was a focal point plant, this is a focal point plant. I mean, the straight species, the Pagoda Dogwood, years and years ago, I think we were together on a photo shoot in Pennsylvania.
Into crumbles, yeah.
Into Crumbolt's garden, and just she had, I guess, maybe 3 or 4 of them at the end of this really long expanse of the garden, and both of us, I think, were at separate times ran over, and we were like, "These are
They were
spectacular." I
amazing.
mean,
They were the Japanese
gorgeous.
version, though. Yeah, the Japanese
Oh,
version
was it?
as often as the case, is much more elegant. But you still get pretty much the same effect from the native one. These are 10 to 12 feet tall.
Yeah, just like this beautiful tiered effect to it, so you kind of can see through it and beyond it. And yeah, I've seen photos of golden shadows. I've never seen it in person, but just the fact that it's that striking habit and it's that glowing, golden chartreuse color in the shade. I mean, I can see myself, if that was at the end of a long garden, I'd be running over to it and going, "What is this? This is awesome!" So yeah, that made my list too.
It's one of those plants that when you see it, you want to know what it is, and once you know what it is, you never forget.
Yes, good call. Good call. I like it. Well, I picked a dogwood too, not to be left out.
Derivative. It's okay. All right. I'm used to it. So
But I picked a shrubby dogwood. I picked Cornus alba. I want to call it Baba Yui. That is not what its actual cultivar name is. It's Neon Burst is its trademark name. So that's Neon Burst Dogwood. And the cultivar name is BYBOUGHEN. Whatever. I'm going to say Baba Yui, but it's Neon Burst Dogwood.
a bog hun.
Yeah. I don't know. Anywho, zones 2 to 7 on this. Cornus alba.
Where is zone 2? That's like just
The Arctic Circle? Fairbanks, Alaska? I'm not sure, but yeah, zone 2. And this is 4 to 5 feet tall and wide. Awesome shrubby plant. Has really, really beautiful red stems, which this year, my red twig dogwoods, I just loved so much. They really came into their own. So you're going to get those red stems in winter, which are awesome. But the thing that you've always said is you won't plant red twig dogwood or any of the shrub dogwoods because they have boring foliage the rest of the year. Well, not this one.
there are variegated ones, yeah.
Elegantissima is the white variegated one. Well, this one's even cooler because it's got these gorgeous, bright yellow golden leaves that when they're emerging, kind of emerge with a pink hue. Then they stay golden the whole year. It doesn't revert to green. And then in fall, gets this gorgeous, almost sassafras-like change in color. It goes from yellow to bright orange to red to dark mahogany. Beautiful. Really, really cool. I got this as a sample plant, I think 2 years ago, as a bare root. I threw it in the ground. I gave it no care. It will take wet. It will take dry. It will take partial shade. It's not a full shade. It needs a little bit of sun, and just absolutely spectacular plant. Thrived and is really sizable now. It's about 3 by 3 for me at this point, after about 2 years. And white flowers in spring that the pollinators go ballistic over. They just love it because it's these white kind of umbel-like flowers, and they're just usually covered with activity. So yeah, it's got it all going on as far as I'm concerned.
It sounds like the shrubby version of Golden Shadows.
You know what? It kind of is.
Perfect compliments to one another,
Yeah.
To balance each other
just
out.
Just like you and me.
And then, yeah. Yeah.
I know you miss me.
Anywho, I don't have a lot of my red twig dogwoods just do not do well. I don't think it's moist enough for them where I have them. They're rarely red. I mean, you just talking about it, I'm like, I should probably go and take a look to see if those things are still there, because they should be screaming at me right now. It's what?
Well, not if you haven't pruned, because it's the new.
I prune them back every year.
You do? Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, because it's that new growth that really has the most vibrant color on most shrub dogwoods.
Believe me, I'm doing the right thing. It's the plants that are not doing.
It's the plants' fault. Yeah. It's the plants' fault. I see. Well, either way, I think that we came up with the perfect thing, that you plant the dogwood tree and I'll plant the dogwood shrub, and then we'll trade at some point. You'll have to buy me one and I'll buy you one. I think I made out in that deal, because I'm pretty sure that yours is far more expensive than mine.
And now, because everything sounds better with a British accent, here's Peter to talk about blessings.
Not all gardens are created equal. Some are large, others small. Some sloped and some flat. Some moist and others dry. And some are sunny, while others are blessed with shade. That's right, I said blessed. If your idea of a successful garden is a sun-drenched border with in-your-face colour where any flower smaller than a volleyball had better be born by the hundreds, you might not agree with me. But to me, that style of garden is the visual equivalent of a rant by a professional wrestler who just ripped the microphone from the announcer's hand to explain the various ways he will maim any who dare oppose him. I prefer something a little quieter, a little more contemplative. That is why I love my shade. Subtle contrasts and understated colour make me slow down and take time to experience the little details that have a profound effect on my mood. You'll find no equivalent to a shouting man here. The ambience is more Van Morrison with an acoustic guitar, dark glasses, and his moody soul. Blessed indeed.
So I know, Danielle, you're too young to know who Van Morrison is. He's a legend in the music industry. You should probably check him out.
Come on, Moondance. I know Moondance.
So you're from your parents, but there's so much more to him than Moondance. Yes.
You know who there's so much more to as well? Our expert on expert testimony. Let's see who we got.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ed Lyon, the director of Ryman Gardens, part of Iowa State University, as well as being the proprietor of Spellbound Garden Writing and Consultation, through which I wrote the book Growing Your Midwest Garden. I'm here today to contribute to one of my favorite topics, shade garden plants. Like most people, I was forced into shade gardening a number of years ago, moving to a property with lots of shade. I have come to embrace the dark, so to speak. It is the shaded nooks of my garden that are the ones for reflection, respite, and the discovery of many lesser-known and unique plants. I live in central Iowa in an area that was formerly prairie. The Midwest is a harsh mistress to gardeners. We have weather extremes different than the rest of the country. We can be 30 below with no humidity in the winter to 95 degrees and 90% humidity in the summer. Our winters beat us with sweeping, desiccating winds, and our springs can ping-pong from 20 degrees to 80 degrees and back to 20 again in 1 week. For that reason, plants in my shade garden must be durable, hardy, and have the ability to not only survive, but thrive in such adverse conditions. They have to be able to withstand high alkalinity, dry soils that can go through extended drought, intense cold and heat, and soils that heave in the spring and rip apart root systems. I do all of the tender plants. I'm a plant geek, so I have to. But the foundation of my plantings are the tough, good doers. That way, when an especially bad season takes out my tenders, I still have a solid garden. Some of the most common shade plants in other areas of the country, such as heuchera and astilbe, are short-lived perennials for us and rarely reach the photo-perfect growth that you see in magazines. So I want to tell you about a few of the stalwarts in my garden that stand up to all of these rigors. If they can tough out our conditions, they should equally thrive in many other areas of the country. The first is the genus Polygonatum, which includes a number of species, but most gardeners are familiar with the durable cultivar that put this plant in practically every garden, Polygonatum odoratum variegatum. I still have the plant in my garden, even though it has become overly common, but there are many great new cultivars with white or gold banding and variegation. As beautiful as the variegation is on Variegatum, The new cultivars have much wider bandings of white, which shines in the shade garden. I have had great success with double stuff and the not quite as robust angel wing, but my current favorite in this category is the harder to find double wide. There are other interesting white striped or splotch selections, including Grace Barker, Striatum, and Biaco. But I'm not done. There are also gold forms, including the gold-striped Fireworks, the mostly gold foliage Goldilocks, and 2 forms of Polygonatum falcatum, Tiger Stripes, and Nippon Sunbeam. And finally, there's even a silver-striped form of falcatum called Silver-Striped Selection. 2 forms without variegation worth planting are the rich red-stemmed Ruby Slippers and the zigzag-stemmed Koryu. That one never fails to capture the attention of my garden visitors. If you haven't been paying attention to how many great selections have followed the reliable Variegatum, you need to look again at the Solomon sales. There is no doubt about it. I am a fanatic for Epimedium. This is perhaps the most drought-tolerant plant I have seen in shade gardens, which is amazing when you see the very shallow fibrous root systems. The selection is enormous. They bloom very early before the foliage emerges, on delicate, orchid-like flowers hanging on ethereal threads of stem in every color except blue and green, and with many bicolors. Some are dwarfed to no higher than 2 to 3 inches, with others easily getting 18 inches high. There is a benefit to these fluttering, exquisite flowers. One spring I was so excited that they were blooming, I dragged my non-gardening partner out and pointed them out gleefully. He looked at them, cocked his head, and he said, "The flowers aren't that showy, are they?" Here's the beauty, folks. To truly enjoy them, you stop and you squat down. Even we gardeners walk our gardens too fast. This is a plant that stops us in our tracks and makes us slow down and enjoy. The foliage is mostly green, but some start in rich maroon to dark purple colors. The foliage is thick and lustrous, ranging from tiny heart-shaped leaves to elongated forms and even some with spiny tips. I have probably 60 cultivars now, so favorites are hard to list, but I do love golden-flowered Amber Queen, long-time favorite lavender-flowered Lilafee, towering pink Orion, and the dancing yellow and red flowers of Yukihi. Once you start perusing the enormous selection available, you'll see what I mean. I am also a lily fanatic. The most overlooked group of the lily family are the species lilies, which include Martagon, Hansonii, Henryi, Davidii, Dalhansonii, Auratum, Pumilum, Superbum, and others with some fantastic hybrids in the mix. All of these lilies have some degree of shade tolerance, whereas the other lily categories most people are familiar with need full sun. Species lilies don't have the enormous trumpet-shaped flowers. In fact, most are nodding downward with petals that reflex backwards and often demonstrate spots. Where their flowers are much smaller than the other lilies, they are extremely floriferous with many flowers per stem and long duration of bloom. They extend the lily season. Martagons will bloom here early June before all others, and Henryi will still be blooming and blooming in July long after the showy lilies are done. The Martagons are my favorite. They have their setback. They still remain some of the most expensive plants I buy, generally $20 to $35 per bulb. Lily bulb size varies by supplier. You can find bulbs sometimes in the $8 to $12 range, but it is likely they will be smaller and take longer to clump up for you. I invest in a certain number of cultivars every year, and that's how I grow my collection. It is also difficult to find selection. Many bulb companies might carry 3 to 4 cultivars, but they are likely the same ones company to company. Currently, I buy mail order from the Lily Nook in Canada. They have an excellent, diverse selection, and the bulbs are some of the most sizable that I have found. The Martagons come in a wide range of colors, from the rich red of Mahogany Bell to super deep red violet of Port Wine to the soft pinks of Manitoba Morning, going to the brilliant orange of Orange Marmalade and then the yellow with speckles in guinea gold. If you want to start with some similar but cheaper forms of species lilies, I recommend looking into some of those other species I previously mentioned. Another workhorse in the garden has been Brunera macrophylla, or heartleaf Brunera. There have been some weak cultivars that couldn't handle drought or sun, but along came silver foliage Jack Frost, a plant that deservedly became perennial plant of the year and became an integral part of almost every shade garden. I do believe Sea Heart became a more scorch-tolerant form of Jack Frost, and Silver Heart the same for the older Sterling Silver, but this year I saw Jack of Diamonds at the Ball Horticulture Trial Gardens, and I was blown away. It was growing alongside pretty much every other cultivar on the market and under the same conditions. Its size and vigor had no competition. I have heard great things since, and I bought 3 to try this season myself. I encourage you to seek it out. I only have time for one more, although there are so many others, so I will finish off with a plant that shines at a challenging time of the year when other plants have waned, that being autumn. Tricyrtis or toad lily has a number of different species, with several that flower in the summer, but most bloom for us from September right through a killing frost. Their boon is also their bane. They do flower very late and with long duration of bloom, but only up to a killing frost. So in years when frost is late, you will have long bloom to enjoy. If frost comes early, it cuts that joy short. The most common species are Herta, Formicana, and Macrantha, each with slightly different habits and forms, but all with stunning orchid-like flowers. I also have to mention, I've been talking about durable shade plants. This one will not survive droughty, thin soils. But if you augment their areas with rich compost and bring the level up to well-drained, evenly moist soils, these plants will defy their delicate look. They'll clump up nicely and come back year after year to provide much-needed fall glam. There are a few forms with variegated foliage, but the true glory is in the floriferous, long-lasting bloom with such an exotic look. If you haven't been growing Tricyrtis, look them up. You won't be sorry. Well, my 10 minutes are up. I hope that my contribution expands shade garden plant selection for you and helps your garden shine in the dark.
So, Danielle, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that, once again, the expert went more towards my suggestions than yours. Again, just stating a fact.
You know what? And I wanted to go back to Ed and say, hey, listen, could you record something else and not talk about Solomon Seal? Because I don't want to listen to Steve brag any more than he already does.
Stating a fact is not bragging.
All right. I'm so glad we're social distancing.